The princess is cursed, and only the kiss of her true love can wake her up. Many princes have been summoned, but as her closest servant and best friend, you are the only one who knows she does not even like men. Part 1. Prince Alan cleared his throat. Right. My turn then? Prince Harold and Lady Elmira turned to him, startled by his uncouth interruption. He did nothing to smooth their ruffled feathers with the cheeky grin he shot them. Harold's kiss had failed to wake Princess Callia from her enchanted sleep, just like all the hopeful noblemen who tried before him. Too bad, but best to keep things moving. Callia wasn't getting any younger or any less bewitched after all. But Elmira looked especially annoyed with him, though he could see that she did her best to hide it. Harold harumphed and stalked past him out of the room imperiously. Alan and his grin turned to watch him go, then back to the stone-faced Elmira. Well, since your highness in such a hurry, she began in clipped tones, her mouth pressed into a thin line. Right you are, my lady, Alan said, snapping his fingers. He brushed past her to the bed, and ignoring her outraged expression, bent down and kissed the princess firmly. Mwah! He pronounced, for good measure, then straightened to regard Princess Callia with a critical eye. She did not stir. Alas, your highness, Elmira began, in a tone that belied her words, but once again Alan declined to let her complete her sentence. Didn't work, he proclaimed, placing his hands on his hips. Clearly, she said, her cheeks began to redden. Shame, too, Alan nattered on. Me and Harry back there were the last two likely lordlings verified to have made poor Callia's acquaintance hereabouts. The candidates for her true love are a dwindling. Their Majesties, the King and Queen, hold out hope her true suitor will emerge to break the spell, Elmira said. Now if you'll kindly bugger off and stop gawking at the helpless girl laying there in her nightclothes, Alan finished, flashing a grin once more. I would not have put it thus, your highness, she practically hissed, her voice again betraying her statement. He nodded amiably. Of course, dear lady, never fear, I shall return inside a fortnight. Return, she exclaimed, this time not bothering to hide her consternation. Do you have a dog? He suddenly asked, cocking his head to one side. What? She sputtered, looking from the princess then back to Alan. Yes, I have a dog. Me too. Aren't they wonderful? Yes, they... What does that have to do with anything? More importantly, why are you coming back in a fortnight when you already know you can't wake the princess? Oh, that... Well, Harry and I were the last local men of quality who yet to try our hand, or lips as it were, at waking the princess. But I seem to recall she attended the grand tourney in Amberholm 2 summers past, Alan explained. Whilst there, any number of eligible young knights in the area to compete in contests of martial gallantry might have caught her longing gaze. Elmira paled. Wait, you don't mean? Yes, I shall go and fetch them, Alan affirmed with a cheerful nod. All of them. Even if I have to drag all 100 or 200 of them here clapped in irons and not let them loose until they've lined up for a smooch. No, Elmira cried. Why ever not, my dear? Alan asked, feigning bafflement. Because. Elmira stammered, looking around, frantically. She took a step closer to Alan, who was gratified that he moved subtly enough that she did not seem to notice him resting a hand on the pommel of his side sword as she closed the gap between them. She licked her lips. Your Highness, the princess here. I am her closest friend. She and I have no secrets. As such, I can assure you she is not in love with any prince or lord. His eyebrows shot up. Really? How can you be certain? And why haven't you told the king and queen that? Would have saved them a lot of trouble sending out heralds and summoning all these fancy young bucks to the castle, don't you think? Because I don't want to take away their hope, Elmira explained, and because they too would ask me how I could be sure, and then I would have to tell them that Princess Callia isn't interested in any of the noblemen, because Princess Callia isn't interested in any man. Do you take my meaning, my lord? Princess Alan nodded slowly. I see. Then he let out a long sigh. All right, I believe you. So, I can count on your discretion, she asked, eagerly. Sure, he agreed. Then he raised a finger. But before I go, I'd like to bring in one more suitor, though, my best friend, Lord Beasley. She threw up her hands. Why? I just told you. Don't worry, he said, waving away her objections. He leaned out into the hallway and whistled sharply. A clatter of claws on stone sounded down the castle corridor, and in a moment a corgi appeared in the doorway, its mouth happily agape, wagging its stubbed tail excitedly. There's a good lad, Alan crooned, as he crouched to vigorously scratch behind Lord Beasley's ears. Enjoying the story? Make sure to subscribe and leave a comment. All right, let's dive back into the story. Part 2. What the hell are you doing? Elmira shouted, discarding all protocol and placing her clenched fists on her hips. Alan looked back at her and smirked. I thought you said you liked dogs, and Lord Beasley is such a good boy. Everyone loves Lord Beasley, and he, of course, loves everyone back. Then, before Elmira could react further, he gently slapped the sturdy little dog on the flank and pointed at the princess where she lay abed. Go on, Bees. Give kisses. The corgi shot forward like a bolt loosed from a crossbow, deftly dodged around Elmira's fumbling attempt to grab him, then hopped onto the princess' bed and slathered her placidly sleeping face with slobbery kisses. As Elmira looked on in horror, the princess exploded in a puff of acrid smoke, causing Lord Beasley to yipe in alarm and scramble backward across the bed. Where she had been, a sleepy-looking basset hound with a jeweled pink collar lay on the bed half covered by blankets, her head awkwardly poking out of the princess's dress. The hound let out an uncertain whine, to which Lord Beasley responded with a cheerful yap and a few excited hops, his momentary terror forgotten amid his new desire to play with a new friend. Elmira whirled on Alan and began to move toward him, but pulled up short as she found the point of his side sword at her chest. I brought Beasley along because I thought he might be able to help. After all, what love could be truer than that of a creature who, as I mentioned, loves everyone? But a lot of things bothered me about this entire affair from the beginning, Prince Alan said, casually. Elmira held up her hands, eyes going wide. My lord, what are you? I have some experience with magical curses. There was this nasty business where I was a frog for a bit, and a girl frog at that, Alan said. Fortunately, I learned that the royal kiss of a prince or princess can break such curses, irrespective of whether or not they are in love with the accursed. But I'm no wizard. Maybe this curse was different, right? Elmira's expression darkened, the fear on her face fading to an anger that made her former annoyance look positively placid. On my way up, I at first thought I'd best leave Beasley in the kennel by the stables unless he was needed, so he could play with the other dogs. But imagine my surprise when I found the princess' own beloved house pet there, penned up with the king's hunting hounds and terriers. On your instructions, the kennel master informed me. Except that's not the princess's dog out there, is it? Alan said with a sly smile. He jerked his head towards the hound on the bed, currently trying to disentangle itself from the princess' dress. That's the princess hound right there. How? Elmira hissed. How in all 9 hells did you work it out? Prince Alan shrugged. I didn't know anything for certain until Beasley, who is a prince among dogs to be sure, licked the princess and changed her back into a dog. Honestly, I can't take too much credit. It's just that I seem to have an almost supernatural knack for foiling the schemes of evil witches and enchanters, as evidenced by my prior frog experience. Elmira's face darkened further, and then all at once it seemed to almost melt away. Her skin sagged as her form warped and changed into that of a sallow-fleshed hag with long, bony arms, stringy white hair, and a mouth full of jagged teeth. Alan was only momentarily stunned by the ghastly apparition and recovered quickly enough to thrust towards her with his sword as he shoved his other hand into his cloak, but she caught the wrist that held the blade in an inhumanly strong grip. Then, to his further horror, the monstrous hag pulled herself forward, letting the blade pierce her through as she leaned in close to him, grinning all the while. Mortal steel is no threat to me, dearie, she crooned, her hideous face inches from his own, so that he winced against the stench of her foul breath. For I am no mortal witch. I thought you might not be. This scheme is a bit bold for one of them, Alan said with a grunt, as he struggled in vain against the hag's vice-like grasp with one arm. The hag cackled and then opened her mouth, her jaw seeming to unhinge, stretching wider and wider as though she meant to bite his head clean off. Just as she began to lunge forward to end him, he whipped his other arm out from beneath his cloak, his clenched fist bristling with bent, rusty black spikes held between his fingers. The hag's eyes widened in fear, but too late as he slammed his spiked fist into the side of her face. She screamed in agony as the nails pierced her, one impaling a lambent yellow eye. But more deadly than the physical injury was the touch of the metal itself. Wherever it struck, the skin burned and bubbled. In an instant, Alan was on top of her. With her supernatural strength dampened, he drove her to the floor, and rained blows down on her. He didn't stop until the nails he held struck the stone floor, and the hag lay still. Panting heavily, Alan dropped the nails atop the ruin he'd made of the hag's head. Lord Beasley barked in alarm. It had all happened so fast the little dog hadn't even had time to process the danger his master had been in. Alan smiled as his hound bounded up to him, barking and sniffing at him anxiously. "'S'all right, boy," he assured him. "I got her. Good thing I scooped up those old horseshoe nails while we were down by the stables, eh? Wicked fairies can shrug off blows from steel sometimes, but plain old cold iron is another matter." He spent a few moments petting his dog and catching his breath before rising to his feet, grunting in pain as he shook out his aching hand. "Well, can't stand around all the ruddy day. Unless I miss my guess, there's a dog in the kennels badly in need of my princely kiss. After all, she did the same for me when I was a frog, and one good turn deserves another." Lord Beasley cocked his head to one side and wuffed inquisitively. Alan glanced down at himself and noted that he was covered in gore and crispy hag bits. "Ah, yes, you're right. Probably best to get cleaned up first." Thank you for listening to the story. If you enjoyed it, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell so you won't miss the next chapter. Your support means a lot.